Hi everyone, I'm Kitty from Rarimo, and in this talk I'm going to introduce Rarimo, and then I'm going to cover two products specifically that have been built on Rarimo that use passport ZKPs and proofs of citizenship. So the first of those is going to be Freedom Tool, which is a surveillance-free voting solution that we built. It's currently being used in Russia by the opposition to challenge Putin, and also in Iran by dissidents to protest the government there. And the second application that I'm going to talk about is called RariMe, and it unlocked passport ZKPs to all projects in Web3. So if you want to use passport ZKPs, you can do that using RariMe. And I'm going to unveil, because we haven't formally announced it yet, a pretty crazy use case that we have coming up with RariMe. So, I can't get the... Got it, cool. Thanks, guys. So what is Rarimo? Rarimo is a ZK social graph. So we not only allow users to privately store and then verify identities and characteristics and all of that, but also the entire history of their social interactions, their reputations, and their networks. And this is so significant because currently privacy really struggles to scale because it often comes at the cost of social capital. And there's this kind of infrastructural trade-off between anonymity and social identity, or anonymity and reputation. And this is pretty disastrous because for most of our meaningful online interactions, we need some kind of nuanced context about who we're engaging with. So for example, like, I don't know, Twitter is pretty useless if you can't actually see the history of someone's tweets and you can't see who follows them and so on and so forth. So by ending this trade-off and unlocking private but verifiable social graphs, Rarimo hopes to unleash a whole plethora of new private applications. And we specifically want to go much further than just doing like anonymous versions of what already exists in Web 2, but introducing completely new ways of coordinating. And we have, thank you. So I think onto the next one specific. Oh, thanks. So we have a very specific context and focus as a company. We're based in Ukraine, in Kyiv, and all of the applications that I'm about to describe we built in wartime conditions. And we very specifically wanted to focus on building tools that could have direct political impact and directly combat totalitarianism and surveillance. And this is why the first identifier that we brought on chain and integrated into our graphs was passport ZKPs. It's why the first app we released was an anti-surveillance voting tool. But this infrastructure is extremely broad, and we really believe that it can be used not only to protect people and regimes, but to just make the whole of the internet like a lot more fun, a lot more personal. So if you have any application that you think could benefit from private verifiability, like, please contact us. We don't only build, or we don't only support political use cases. But speaking of political use cases, I'm going to talk now about Freedom Tool, which is the surveillance-free voting application I've mentioned. And Freedom Tool solved a really long-standing challenge in digital democracy, which was how do you confirm someone's identity and that they're eligible to vote without simultaneously exposing them to tracing and maintaining their anonymity. And basically the answer is ZKPs. So how Freedom Tool works is you take your biometric passport and you use your phone to scan it. And Freedom Tool verifies the data on the NFC chip inside the passport. And it does this by retrieving the certificate and also the government-issued key. And it's important to emphasize that in this entire process, none of the data ever leaves the device that you're using. It never passes through a centralized server where it could be intercepted. There's no points in this process where that data can be intercepted. And what happens instead is a ZKP is generated confirming that there's a user who's over 18, that they're a citizen, that they're a unique human. And this ZKP is sent to a voting smart contract, and the user is then issued an anonymous voting pass that they can then use to cast their votes. And the votes themselves are sent directly to the blockchain where they're tamper-proof. So just to summarize, like ZKPs, we use them to sever the link between identity and the vote. And we've had two uses, so in Russia and Iran. And what was really interesting about both of these implementations is that the groups using them kind of recognized even more so, I think, than we did as a team, how valuable this tool was, not just for voting, but actually setting up entire protected community spaces and kind of kickstarting these like dissident dark forests that can be used for then all kinds of further activity. And I'll address this later in the talk, but with the launch of RariMe, you can start building out additional layers on top of these voting apps. So for example, encrypted messaging services and all sorts of things. So on to, and just a quick diagram of how it works. And onto its implementation in Russia. So the app in Russia was kind of launched and led by a prominent Russian opposition activist figure called Mark Fagan, who was also a Pussy Riot lawyer. And the app launched in March. And for the first 2 months, we didn't, there were no votes or anything. It was just building like trust in the infrastructure, kind of spreading the word about it. The Kremlin did not like it. There was all sorts of kickback. The app was temporarily removed from the App Store. Bots sort of flooded it and gave it bad reviews. But despite all of this, it like withstood those attacks. And the first vote went live about a month ago. And it was specifically designed to challenge Putin's inauguration. So Russian citizens can vote to state whether or not they consider the electoral process legitimate. The vote will stay open for a couple more months. I think we'll get the final results in September. And on the day that the app launched, we had 15,000 downloads, which is a tiny percentage of the Russian population, but for a social DApp was record-breaking. And we're expecting quite a small number of engagement in this first vote because the fear factor is going to be so high. But we expect that as time continues and as people see that the people using these apps aren't prosecuted and that the cryptography stands up, that there'll be higher and higher levels of engagement with each vote or poll that takes place. So that is, what's going on in Russia. And then in Iran, an app has been launched called Iranians Vote. It was built by 2 NGOs. The first one is Unchained, that's led by Amin Soleimani, and the second is TCTEV by Arman Turksaban. And this went live on the 28th of June, which is the same date as the presidential elections in Iran. So the idea was that as an Iranian citizen, you could cast a vote of no confidence in any of the presidential candidates. And like the use case in Russia, this vote's going to be open for several months. And we, again, don't imagine that a huge percentage of the dissident population in Iran will use it. It will be like a proof of concept and see more engagement over time. So after we launched Freedom Tool, we kind of wanted to unleash Passport ZKPs to the broader Web3 community. And we also wanted to allow users to store the interactions that they use these Passport ZKPs for and start including them in social graphs. So we launched RariMe, which allows both those things to happen. Thank you. So RariMe is essentially a privacy-first identity wallet. And it allows you to store identities and then history of interactions with them and generate ZKPs verifying it. And passports are just the first identifier in this wallet. We're going to bring more and more, we're going to integrate more and more. And it's pretty similar to how Freedom Tool works in that you take your passport, you scan the NFC chip, except this time you get an incognito profile that's stored on the app that reflects some of the data in your passport, including your age and your citizenship. And you can then use this to generate ZKPs for any of those characteristics. And like Freedom Tool, there's no third parties, none of the passport data ever leaves the device. And also, what's really cool is you become the issuer of your own identity when you use it. So in a lot of pre-existing frameworks, there has to be a third party to verify the identity and then to issue you with your digital identity. And we don't have that. There's no centralized third parties at all. So that was a feature that I was like pretty proud of. And the beauty of RariMe is that it unlocks all these additional use cases. So kind of most obviously is you can use it as an anti-Sybil measure in airdrops. And by expanding the use cases that you can use passport ZKPs for, we also provide a level of protection for all the people that are using Rarimo's products to do anonymous voting. So first of all, it introduces an element of plausible deniability, because one of the risks with Freedom Tool applications was that potentially if you're arrested and the app is found on your phone, they could prosecute you just off the back of this. But now with RariMe, you can be like, no, I don't even care about politics. I just wanted my Pepe meme coins or whatever. And also, because with RariMe, we publish the passport hashes on chain, the more diluted the network, the more difficult it is to deduce what kind of behavior these passports might be engaging in. So we just generate a proof saying this user belongs to a pool in which there are a load of passports, and that's how we verify the uniqueness. So if you are doing an airdrop, a project with an airdrop, I strongly encourage you to consider RariMe as an anti-Sybil measure. It's not only very robust, but you will be helping dissidents who are using the protocol to vote and protest and have their voices heard. So a couple of the stuff, thank you. A couple of the use cases we have planned immediately. Firstly, we're going to be distributing our own token, the Rarimo token, exclusively through RariMe. And secondly, we're going to use it for humanitarian aid drop into Ukraine, where we're going to use proofs of citizenship to ensure that the money is going directly into the pockets of civilians and bypassing third parties. And we're working with a bunch of charities on the ground to identify, citizens particularly in need of this service. And you can scan this QR code and download the RariMe app. At the moment, it's invite only, so there's an invite only code attached that you'll have to enter. And if that code doesn't work, I also have a bunch of cards with the code on it that I'm just going to stick on that barrel. And yeah, again, I'd encourage everyone to download the app. Again, if you sign up and you enter your passport, you'll help protect the most vulnerable users in our network, but also you will get tokens. So that is RariMe. And on the next slide, Rarimo's details if you want to stay in touch. It's my Twitter and Rarimo's Twitter. Like I said, we have a specific interest internally in political use cases, but this infrastructure supports any use case that would need a private but verifiable social graph. So if you have any ideas, please come find me and we'd be more than happy to support you. And I'm just going to close with a massive thank you to Nebra for organising this, and also to all of the projects that have laid the foundations for this, because we built this on the backs of a lot of work from other people in the industry, and I think most of the projects in this room are doing really incredible work to further privacy and keep people safe. So, thank you.